So while I was watching Inside Out 2, you were doing a big board.
I was.
And you put Dalton Knecht at number 1, which I don't agree with it, but I don't think it's bananas. I do think it's unusual. Most people don't have Dalton Knecht that high. Yeah. I'm not saying nobody does, because somebody might. You do. Why? Are you just a radio host trying to get calls? You're just trying to get calls.
I'm not. No. Okay.
Or do you really believe Dalton Knecht? Let me make sure I'm getting this right. Do you believe? Does your big board suggest you believe Dalton Knecht will be the best player from this draft?
Yes. So that is bingo, bango. So every year I put out essentially a big board, and it has been presented in the form of a mock draft in the past, but let's just present this what it is. I am trying to project the players in order that I expect to have the most fruitful, successful, best NBA careers in a given class. As I mentioned earlier on Tuesday, I am unfortunately and genuinely on balance underwhelmed by this class. If you told me there weren't more than 20 guys in this class that don't make a second contract, I'd believe you. And I'd love to be wrong, but as you know, you talk to folks around the league who absolutely mimic this opinion, man. It is very much, hey, we might get to this guy in the teens or whatever, and maybe we get lucky and he winds up being something. So I pick Knecht. Here's my top 6, because I actually think the top 6 that I have them in the same bucket, if you will. I don't think there's a lot that separating them and their growth potential at the NBA level, even if they're different ages and different positions. But these were the 6 names that I consider to put at number 1. I have Dalton Knecht 1. I have Alex Sarr at 2. I have Reed Sheppard at 3. I have Zachary Rizachet at 4. I have Devin Carter at 5, and I have Donovan Clingan at 6. Those were the 6 players that I actually considered. And yes, you heard me right. Devin Carter is at 5. I love his two-way potential, and I think he can be an extremely successful NBA player. I went with Knecht because he's a 6'6" wing who's really athletic, is certainly competent on defense. He's got what I describe as confrontational athleticism. He's unafraid to get into the paint, and he is a great shooter. And yes, he's a late bloomer. He didn't start out as a Division I player, but in a draft where it does feel, GP, like we are just tossing darts, I am going to bet on the guy that I think has the best combo of deep shooting ability, good size, isn't a sieve on defense, and has real athleticism. And he's also, he's a bit of an MFer there out on the floor. So I went with him over Sarr, who he might go 1, he might not go 1, but there are way more questions about Sarr as an offensive producer to be like a number 1 kind of guy. I think defensively he's good, but I wasn't sold on him as being most likely to be the best all-around player. Reed Sheppard, he's arguably a better shooter than Knecht. He's certainly younger. He has more value as a prospect because he is younger, but he's not as rangy. He's not as tall as Knecht. And so because of that, I think I have him 3rd on the list. Like I love so much about Sheppard, but as I wrote there, I said his measurables and some legitimate questions about his defensive durability are the only things holding him back. If Reed Sheppard was 3 inches taller, just like if anyone else was necessarily 3 inches taller, but if Reed Sheppard specifically, if you didn't adjust the height of anyone else in the draft, but you gave Reed Sheppard 3 more inches, he'd be the number 1 pick in this draft. He just would be. I have him 3rd. Rizachet, he's an up and like most people watching and listening to this podcast have not seen Rizachet play. He has some number 1 buzz to the Hawks. We'll see if that winds up being the case. I have talked to a few folks about him, and I have done my diligence trying to watch. I just don't see a prospect that is like, yep, that should be the number 1 guy. He's going to be the best NBA player of the group. Devin Carter, say no more, man. I think he is ultra competitive, an elite NBA on-ball defender, can play the point, has a size, his shooting has improved. I love a lot about him. And actually in recent days, you've seen how he's been talking more. I think he talked to Kevin O'Connor at The Ringer about studying Jalen Brunson's game. Love to hear that. And then Clingan, or our buddy Sam Vecini, we'll try and get him on before the show's over. He has Clingan mocked 1 to the Hawks, which does actually match. Hurley told me this on the record, which I appreciated, but I actually heard it through another source off the record, that the Hawks actually are pretty intrigued with Clingan. We'll see if he actually goes number 1 when he gets to the draft next week. And the only reason why I didn't put Clingan number 1 is, can we really see him growing into the kind of perimeter and kind of deeper shooter that that might validate him having the best career of them all. So I'm not trying to say who's going to be the best rookie. I'm not trying to tell you who's going to be best at the end of the first contract. I'm trying to project out when we get to the end of the career, 10 plus years in the future, 15 years in the future, who do I think is most likely to be the best NBA player? And so for that reason, I took Knecht. By the way, I have Kyle Filipowski, who I'm way higher on than everyone, at 7, Cody Williams at 8, Zach Edey at 9, and Stephon Castle at 10.
I thought I was higher than most on Devin Carter. I've got him mocked 9th to the Grizzlies right now. His father, of course, is an assistant coach there. He's somebody who could play beside Ja Morant. He's somebody who could back up Ja Morant. Obviously, Ja hasn't been available 82 games ever. So, like, you know, you might need a starting point guard at some points in the season as well for a variety of reasons. And though his age might work against him, Devin Carter, I'm talking about here.
Yeah.
With some franchises, I don't think it should with the Grizzlies. Like, they're trying to go right now. Like, I know that they're not on everybody's radar because this season was a disaster and Ja's had injury and off the court problems. But before this year, they finished second in the West 2 straight years with like 22 and 23-year-olds. They were the Oklahoma City Thunder before the Oklahoma City Thunder were. And now all those guys should be healthy and older next year. They're trying to, I'm not sitting here and saying they're going to win the West next year, but they're trying to, and they think they can compete for it. So, like, the negativity that might be attached to Devin Carter's age by, say, a Pistons franchise that's in a total rebuild mode, it should not be considered a negative for a franchise like the Grizzlies that are trying to win right now. So I don't know that he'll end up there. Nobody knows if he'll end up there, but I thought I was high on him at 9. You've got him in your top 5.
Just so we're clear, though, I know you know this, GP, but like, I'm not projecting Devin Carter will be a top 5 pick. I think that he will wind up being one of the 5 best players in this. Yeah,
you're not even projecting Dalton Knecht will be a top 5 pick.
No, I'm not.
Right.
I would actually be stunned if he was a top 5 pick. His age is going to be one of the things that holds him back. But Knecht, and I'm not saying if you're a top 2 NBA player or top 2 college player, you're going to be a top 10 NBA player. That just so happens to be the case in this big board, because I believe you and I both know it's not just about like how well you shoot, but it's how you get your shots and how you play in an offense. Knecht, to me, man, it would be hard for me to see how he would not have a sustaining NBA career, and he has all the tools there. With Edey, who I have at 9, it's not that he was the 2-time National Player of the Year. That there's plenty of stock in that, and he's not going to go in the top 10. To me, it would be almost a failure of a coaching staff if they drafted him and couldn't find ways to use him, because he's smart, intelligent, and he actually has the combination of all of these things that he's done and proven, and the size is undeniable. And he hasn't been playing college basketball, but since the back half of his high school since the back half of his high school career. So the fact that he is still actually improving, like by the year, if not by the month, makes him, to me, an intriguing prospect. I'm not saying that he's going to be able to be on the floor with 4 minutes to go in a 2 versus 7 NBA playoff series a year from now if he happens to be on that kind of team. I'm not projecting that, but I do think that he has a very good chance at sticking on a roster, being deployed correctly, and averaging somewhere, maybe 12.5 and 8.5 for his career. And so I would, if I'm a team picking in the teens, especially in this kind of draft, I don't know, man. I would lean there. But again, I'm just a dude who covers college basketball, talks to some scouts and folks about these prospects. I don't proclaim to have the very best eye when it comes to this stuff. I do occasionally hit on some. I occasionally miss on some, and I am lower on some other guys than some. I'm higher on some other guys than some. I got Terrence Shannon at 14. You want to talk about TSJ? No? Okay. Tyler Kolek is at 15. I'm higher on him than most. I got Trey Alexander at 22. I don't think he'll go in the first round. Trey Alexander, I think, needs to be taken in the first round. I think he is a tremendous prospect who can do a little bit of everything and be a good backup guard in the league. And then you've seen a lot of Tristan De Silva buzz out there. I actually think KJ Simpson, his teammate from Colorado, will get taken after Cody Williams, but I like KJ Simpson a lot there. So that's just a little bit of a taste. You can read this on CBSSports.com and the CBS Sports app. We'll make sure we put a link to it also in the podcast description. But just, a fun little projection. Let me ask you, you don't do it necessarily the big board, you do the mock. You mentioned you were high on Devin Carter. Is there 1 or 2 players that you either maybe haven't even put in a first round mock that you think you would give a top 30 grade to, or someone that you might have mocked at, 10, 12, 14 or wherever, that you just personally you are higher on than maybe the consensus is right now?
Reed Sheppard, I would put number 1. I would take Reed Sheppard first in this draft. And there was something interesting you said there. And I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying this always gets twisted up.
Mm-hmm.
Buddy, I've noticed lately my words get twisted up sometimes. People don't take them the way I intend them. So let me say this as clearly as I can say it. I'm not comparing Reed Sheppard to Steph Curry.
There, he did it.
But
I follow you on this, by the way.
If you go through the draft process heading into the Steph Curry draft,
yes,
everybody said the same things. It's the same stuff. Like,
I
okay,
agree
yeah,
with
he
this
can
entirely.
really shoot. Yeah, he can really shoot, but is he really a point guard? Is he really going to be somebody you can just put the ball in his hands? And is he going to be able to lead an offense, be a lead guard? And God, he's just so small. And look at him. Like, is he this enough? And is he that enough? All the shooting and all the dribbling, it was all there at day. We saw it all. I can remember after the Elite Eight run, we were at LeBron James camp or something. It was one of those things where all the best, some college players come in and then the best incoming freshmen are there. I don't remember exactly, but I remember DeMar DeRozan was there. Steph Curry was there. I want to say like Tyreek Evans was there. They were counselors at this camp. And in between sessions, they would play pickup. And there were a lot of NBA scouts there to watch these pickup games. And this was before Steph's last year of college, but after the incredible run to the Elite Eight where he became a phenom, right? Such a big phenom that he got Davidson into the Jimmy V the subsequent year. That kind of stuff doesn't happen, but that was the star power of Steph Curry. I remember being at this thing when the NBA scout was sitting there and we were just watching. And this was still when people weren't even saying Steph Curry's a top 10 pick, at this point. They were like, I don't know, that was a nice little mid-major run, but I don't know. And I'll never forget this. NBA scout sitting right with me. We're watching all these guys who are supposed to be the top picks in the next draft. You know what he said? Who's better than him? Nobody here's better than him, pointing at Steph. Like, you could keep looking at all these mock drafts and listening to people. I'm just telling you, I watched the NCAA tournament. I watched him last year. I'm watching him right now. He's the best player out here. And yet, at the end of the day, franchises just got caught up too much on what they imagined he couldn't do, as opposed to just look at the stuff that's right in front of you. And when you said, if Reed Sheppard was 3 inches taller, he'd be the number 1 pick, I go, what if somebody would have said that about Steph Curry? Because at 6'2", he's still like, Steph Curry at 6'2" should have been the number 1 pick in that draft. And I'm not saying Reed Sheppard's going to be in it. I'm not.
Curry was, what's wild. I know you're not saying that. Let me just jump in real quick. Curry was even semi-controversial as a top 10 pick that year, even coming off of think back to that time and place and how much he had done as a college player. And we're talking about a dude who, Jimmy Patsos was a little wild in general, but literally like Jimmy Patsos. If you have not Google.
Oh, it's the funniest thing. I think this is how I
definitely wrote about it. You wrote about it.
I think I ripped Jimmy. And looking back on it, I apologize to Jimmy.
No, I mean,
because it's hilarious.
He was like guarding him 4-on-1. It was insanity. Anyway, so there's a lot of that. Now, I want to be clear on this, and I think GP would agree. Reed Sheppard doesn't have the dazzle that Curry's game has, and he didn't have a lot of the one-on-one playmaking that Curry had displayed over more years at Davidson, frankly. But there's a lot of similarities, and I have thought about this. And if you told me that we looked up in 8 to 10 years, and Reed Sheppard was consistently viewed as one of the 3 best shooters in the NBA, 1, I would believe you, and 2, if that actually came to be, there would be a very strong likelihood that because of that fact, that Reed Sheppard wound up being the best prospect in this draft. Yes, I've thought about this a lot. Yes.
So just like you, I've missed. I'm right sometimes about prospects. I'm wrong sometimes about prospects. You're right sometimes. You're wrong sometimes. So is Oklahoma City's general manager,
Presti,
and the Sam Presti and the Oklahoma City's front office. Everybody gets some right. Everybody gets some wrong. All right. It's funny, like you get one wrong, you say, I don't really know about this guy, and then he becomes an all-star, and like your mentions are just.
Are you speaking from experience?
Oh God, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, except I ain't had one person tweet me about Jordan Poole in at least a year. Where are all the Jordan Poole people who used to tweet me? Where are you? Did they all die or move to Bloomington?
I think they became Illinois fans.
Did all the Jordan Poole fans die or move to Bloomington? That's what I need to know, because I ain't heard from them in a while. And also, where are the Emmanuel Quickley fans? Where are you guys?
I'm serious about this, man. This is as your friend, we got HQ coverage next week. And by the way, we got a mock draft special that's going to come on Monday afternoon. Be on the lookout for that. I better see some C's or worse from you this year. Okay.
I think I'm out the grade game.
You're out of the grade game. Okay.
No, because my autistic mind will not allow me to do things that don't make sense to me. So like your producer wants you to you got to give somebody an F and I'm like, if a franchise does in this spot exactly what I would have done in this spot, how does it logically make sense for me to say that's an F? They're literally doing what
they're pulling you off it because you were too soft. That's what it is.
Well,
okay.
Because I would come on HQ and I would go, and I'm just making something up here. If I were the Suns, I would take this player here. And then they'd come on and take this player, the exact same player I just said. And I'd say, well, I guess that's an A+. And they go, you're giving too many A's. I'm like, they just did what I told them to do.
You're no Pete Prisco. You're no Pete Prisco. Yeah.
I know.
You are no Pete Prisco. I know that much.
So how ridiculous would I sound if I said, if I were the Suns here, I would take Matt Norlander. And then Adam Silver's like, and with the 22nd pick, the Phoenix Suns take Matt Norlander. And I go, D. He'd be like, what? D? You just said that.
You know what? I'd understand. I would.
Yeah. Okay.
That might even be generous.
I might just do it. I might ask to get back on the grades and then do it and be like, this is what you said you wanted. Everybody's getting D's. So I think I'm out. But what if I just with the number 1 pick, the Hawks take Donovan Clingan. D, he stinks.
Yes.
Just everybody You know what? I've believed this for a while. If you just played law of averages and just every time they asked you about a prospect, say, I don't think this is a good pick, you'd be right more than you're wrong.
I know you absolutely. That's all
you have to do.
That's the truth. You would be right way more often than not.
If you just say after every one of them, and now let's go to GP. So GP, what do you think about the Spurs taking Stephon Castle? Just not going to work. Probably a mistake. If you just said that every time, you would be right way more often than you're wrong.
Yeah, I'm going to need at least one of those next week. I'm going to need at least one.
What if I just go straight into character on the draft cover? Just be like,
I'm going to need at least one of them.
So GP, Alex Sarr to the Wizards. I don't think that's going to work. Just every one of them, just like, I don't know about this one.
Yeah, it almost sounds like I think you should leave kind of sketch. I kind of like it.
I'm going to be the most negative draft night analyst in the world. I'm going to assume nobody's going to work out. And that's the other thing about it. First off, most of these guys will not work out. Most of these guys will never talk about again.
Yep.
But to your point about being a weak draft, the last draft I remember people talking about like this is the dumbest draft in the history of draft. 2013, that's the one where Anthony Bennett went number 1. It's a weak draft. Anthony Bennett went number 1. He was a disaster, right?
Yeah.
You know who else was also in that draft? Giannis, Rudy Gobert. So I agree that broadly speaking, this is a weak draft. An NBA All-Star or 2 or 3 are coming out of this draft.
They should.
I don't know who they are, but they will. They will. It just you don't.
Well, trivia time, and that I don't have an answer to. I'd be genuinely curious. Let's set 2018 as the most recent bar. What's the most recent pre-2018 draft that didn't produce an All-Star? I'd be curious.
I have looked at this before, and I don't want to speak definitively on it because I don't remember the results, but it was like basically every draft produces an All-Star.
How about that? All right.
Yeah, I mean, like maybe it's just a one-time All-Star reserve, but like
someone was drafted and appeared in an All-Star game.
You're going to have a hard time finding a draft that didn't produce an NBA All-Star. So this one will as well. I would go with Reed Sheppard. The other guy I'm higher on than most, Jacoby Walter at Baylor.
Okay.
I think if you
top 15,
I would have him top 10 as well, and most people don't right now. I think sometimes it's a little bit like AP polls. You're better off sometimes going back to the very first one and just looking at that than you are looking at something in the middle of the season, because you can get caught up in you can get away from what your initial thoughts were. And I think some of that's happened with Walter. He was not amazing at Baylor, but he wasn't bad either. And if you just believe in him as a shooter with size and a score, like I would take him in the top 10. I'm not sure he's going to go in the top 10. On Knecht, I'm not as high as you are on him, obviously, but I'm not certain if I were really putting a big board together, I wouldn't have him in the top 5 range. I'm always interested talking to our former NBA players who we work with about prospects. I remember this moment specifically very early in the season. We're just sitting in the studio watching games, and Wally Zerbiak, we were at a Tennessee game on one of the screens, and he just it was like, this was early in the season. And he said, GP, where do you have him in your mock draft? And I said, who? He said, Dalton Knecht. I said, well, I haven't even done a mock draft yet. Like, it's so early for that. I think I did a lottery last year, but I have not done an actual mock draft. He was like, well, where is he in other people's mock drafts? I was like, I don't think he's in there. He's not a top 30 pick right now. He's a mid-major player who just enrolled at Tennessee. He's like, that's crazy. He will play in the NBA. Like, that's nuts. He's got size. Look at his shoulders, high release. He can bounce it. He was like, that guy. Like, Wally might applaud you by putting him at the top of the board. Wally was a big fan of Dalton Knecht. And I always love that. Like, there's some people who live and die with, say, KenPom or mock drafts, and they're very in tune with everything. And then Wally, I say this, he'll look at him, but he's not going to come in and be like, so where was he ranked at 24/7 Sports? He's never asked me that. He just sort of watches it and he's like, oh, I see something there. That guy can play. That guy's good. And without knowing, is Dalton Knecht on mock drafts or not, he was like, it is crazy if people don't have this guy in their mock drafts. I'm telling you, he can play in that league. Look up now and you've got him number 1. Everybody has him in the top 10. So I'm a believer in Knecht. I think he's going to be very good. I wouldn't have him 1, but I wouldn't have him far away from 1.
Really fun story. We look at the journey he's taken over the past few years, and now, he's got the lottery room invite and green room invite, and he'll be taking the lottery. Could be a top 10 pick. By the way, classic show here. Before we went on, I was like, we can make this a quick episode. Good God, man, we're at an hour. Let's get the hell out of here.
I've even got